Yeah, hi folks. Yes, it's quite clear that the so-called affordable water reform in New Zealand is lipstick on a pig. And you can quite safely say that the so-called voice to Parliament in Australia is just a pig on its own. But anyway, folks, I'll start today off in New Zealand.
Good evening. The controversial Three Waters policy is getting a major overhaul with a promise of greater council input and no rates blowout. Let's take a look. The new plan combines the services of 67 councils into 10 public water entities, regionally owned and led. That's up from the original plan of 4. The new borders, as you can see, based on existing regional areas. The savings? Well, take Christchurch as an example, the biggest city and the biggest new entity. Without reforms, the average cost per household is estimated at over $5,000 by 2054. Under the new approach, that's less than $2,500, a saving of 54%. And savings between 50% and 66% are projected across each region. Each entity will have a regional representative group made up of members from council and iwi. Delivery of services is expected by July 2026 or earlier if ready. With more details and what the revised plan means for you, here's senior political reporter Benedict Collins.
The Prime Minister wants you to say goodbye to Three Waters and hello to
affordable water reform.
A cheeky
Yes, lipstick on a pig.
rebranding and a significant back down.
Here's the guts of it.
There will now be 10 regional water entities, not 4.
There'll be more mayors that support this proposal than supported the last one, because they recognise that with a seat at the table, guaranteed for every mayor in the country, they'll be able to ensure that the priorities of their local communities are heard.
How much more palatable do you think these changes are going to make Three Waters?
I think the feedback we heard really clearly was that local communities want to have a say.
Yeah, and so do women.
Sean.
I just wanted to ask you, given comments by Keir Starmer in Britain, how do you and how does this government define a woman?
Vagina, vagina, vagina. Spit it out.
To be honest, Sean, that question's come slightly out of left field for me. Biology, sex, gender. People define themselves. People define their own genders.
So it's not vaginas or penises then?
Keir Starmer has said that he believes 99.9% of women do not have penises. And I know it's a strange thing for him to say, but given recent events in New Zealand, I'd ask again, how do you define what a woman is?
Well, I think as I've just indicated, I wasn't expecting that question, so it's not something that I've, pre-formulated an answer on. But
Wow, if you need to pre-formulate an answer to that question, it's no wonder your marriage failed.
and how their water entities are operating, and this gives them a much greater say.
Do you lose some of that economy of scale, though, that you had with the 4 groups now that you've gone out to 10? Is it going to make it tougher?
The modelling would suggest that the fewer groups you have, the greater the efficiency you get, but this is still going to be significantly more efficient than what we're doing now.
And it's got some tentative backing.
I'm reasonably convinced that what has happened today will reassure a large number of councils.
The government will be hoping today's revamp of Three Waters pacifies some of that public opposition towards their plan, and the opposition will be hoping it doesn't.
Yeah, as my mum and dad would say, it's like changing the label on a larder. You still got a larder. Essentially, all that we've done is rebrand. All this government has done is rebrand Three Waters with a different name. It's gone from 4 entities to 10, but the same structure, and it hasn't changed the divisive co-governance. It needs to be repealed.
Divisive co-governance that needs to be repealed. Did you hear that, folks? Lily-livered Luxon has just found a spine. Maybe from Stop Co-Governance, perhaps.
And one group of councils say today's changes are little more than tweaks that do nothing to resolve concerns around property rights and local input.
More entities doesn't make this more appealing, and in fact New Zealanders will see straight through it. That effectively a rename and a rebrand isn't going to change what it's been all about.
I've been speaking to mayors that are members of Communities for Local Democracy that are in favour of today's proposal. I know the chairs aren't, but I don't think they represent 31 councils anymore.
We've lost no councils.
The government's convinced.
No, I think we've nailed it.
It's finally built a bridge over troubled Three Waters.
And Benedict is with us now live. We've heard the plan, Benedict. What's the next step?
Well, the government now has quite a lot of work on its hands. It's planning on holding a select committee process into these changes that it has announced today. Then it's planning on bringing amended legislation back before the House and passing that, and it's hoping to do that, or has promised to do that, before the election. And given the election is 6 months away tomorrow, it's got a fair bit to do.
It's been a tortuous ride getting to this point. Has the government done enough here to quell all the controversy around Three Waters?
Well, yeah, the government thinks it's really found the sweet spot here, that it's found this perfect middle ground where it can get these changes made to our national water infrastructure and keep local government on side and keep them happy at the same time. But look, National and the ACT Party, they say this changes absolutely nothing. They are likening this to a lick of paint on an old rusty car. They say it's absolutely changing nothing. And they say, whether we're going to be calling this Three Waters or not, I think you can guarantee that National and ACT are going to do everything they can to try and keep this on the public's radar up until the election.
Māori still have a say with equal...
Yeah, but essentially the problem is still racist co-governance.
Māori still have a say with equal representation on each entity's regional group. This group then picks a board based on merit to run the entity.
There'll be equal representation of mana whenua and other representatives, local government, so that's my read into it.
You arrogant a-hole. Why do you think Maori have any more knowledge about water than anyone else does?
They don't call it co-governance, so there's probably a question mark around that.
Savings for ratepayers is now the government's selling point, but not everyone's buying it.
The government's pretending with Three Waters and now 10 Waters that people can have their cake, the extra infrastructure, and eat it too by not having to pay for it. That's just not true.
Somebody else decides and the ratepayer or the taxpayer pays, so what difference does it make?
They should just stop it straight away.
And Luxon 2.0 from across the ditch also seems to be growing some testicles these days.
Peter Dutton has made the biggest call of his Liberal leadership.
In opposing the Prime Minister's Canberra voice, we're actually uniting the country and bringing people together.
The opposition leader not only announcing the Liberal Party opposes the government's proposed model for the voice, but vowing to actively campaign against it.
It will be. I don't believe this is in our country's best interest.
You don't say. But just like Luxon, he's late and timid.
He should have opposed it May 2022, the night of the election, when Anthony Albanese made it the very first priority of his government. He should have opposed it then and there on principle, because as you said, this is a race-based measure. We're going to enshrine race politics into our constitution. We're going to...
Yeah, we don't have a constitution, but that's exactly what's happening in New Zealand. And Australia is finally waking up to it, and they're learning a lot from us.
There was a press release comparing the voice to what we've seen in New Zealand. What can we learn from what's happened in New Zealand?
We can learn a lot. New Zealand is a deeply divided country along issues of race. They call it co-governance. It's another word for two nations in one. There was an opinion poll last year. 75% of New Zealanders think that the country is more divided on racial issues than the year before.
Thank you, Jacinta Ardern.
Didn't get the right Jacinta.
Yeah, get the right Jacinta with the D. But this is so shocking because New Zealand really was an example, I think, along with Australia, of racial harmony. It was one of the more tolerant, open, well-functioning societies, and now to see these racial divisions develop in recent years certainly shouldn't be the road we go down.
Well, it all started in New Zealand with an advisory body. In the 70s, the Waitangi Tribunal was set up as an advisory body. 12 years later, the highest court said the government's got to treat its advice as binding. And then we got Maoris never ceded sovereignty. Then we got Maoris have a veto over certain legislation. Then Maoris get priority to the COVID treatments. It's this is the path we're on. And Anthony Albanese said it himself. In 2020, the tweet is still up on Twitter. He said, we want to follow the New Zealand path. Well, it leads to racial separatism.
Yeah, now folks, John's story is absolutely correct in saying this stuff leads to racial separatism, because that is exactly what has happened to the Maori Health Authority. It is separatism. Anyway, folks, I've posted all the relevant links below.